Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being with us again today. Well, from the moment I first got my hands on an FN-Pfive-seven, I always thought, I thought it was an interesting pistol, and I like to shoot it. It's a lot of fun. But I never really considered it a good choice for concealed carry because of the overall bulk of the gun. And I felt the same way when I shot the Ruger 57. Well, today we're taking a look at the Smith & Wesson M&P 5.7. Is this gun going to be a better option for carry? Well, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Alright, once again, welcome back. Thanks for being with us today. If this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've been watching our videos and just haven't had the chance until now, and you like our content, please consider subscribing. You can locate that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your computer screen there, or if you're on a mobile device, you can scroll down below the video, and you can hit the subscribe button that way. It's a simple thing that helps out a whole lot, and we really appreciate it. So, Smith & Wesson M&P 5.7. If you've had any opportunity at all to look at either the FN-Pfive-seven or any of the others that have followed, you've probably made the observation that it's a good sized gun. I mean, it's a bulky firearm. Now, the M&P is still a large gun, and we're going to cover this more in the specs, but I think in many ways there's actually a better shot of this actually being a concealable gun, especially if they did one thing to it. But anyway, we're going to start off the way we always do, which is a bit of a size comparison here just to show you. The Smith is actually, really, if you take the threaded barrel out of the equation, it's not that much bigger than a Glock 17. If you look at these two together, if you look at your overall size of your grip, the trigger, all the way down, it's really just this little extra bit of bulk right here. And, it's not exactly the same, but you can see what I'm driving at. If you could comfortably carry a Glock 17, which many people do, then there's a good chance that you could carry the M&P 5.7. Now, if you look at it from this standpoint, you can see that the M&P is actually a bit thinner. If you had the right kind of holster, looks like you're looking from the back here, your total height there from the sights down the bottom of the grip. I think if you had the right kind of holster, then that would not be impossible to do. We'll cover that more in the carry section, but that's your basic size comparison. Alright, we're going to jump right into the features here, but before we do, we'll take a moment to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the Smith & Wesson M&P 5.7 for our tabletop review today. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearms safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. So, we're going to take a look at this thing over. Before we do, of course, we're going to do our traditional safety check here and let you see that the firearm is empty. It is safe and ready to go here. And one of the first things you may notice is that it does, of course, have a threaded barrel. This firearm is based, you can see the influences from the regular M&P line. It is a little bit different in the way it's made. This does have a rotating barrel. And it's supposed to be very good for use with suppressors. So that's a good thing. Capacity, you have 22 round magazine, so 22 plus 1, which is outstanding. And so as we go across the top here, you can see you've got your little cuts in the slide here, serrations on the front and on the rear. You have got an optics plate right here, so if you want to throw a little holo sun on there and give yourself some red dot aiming, you can do that. Its standard sighting is just going to be your white dot standard sights here, which are just fine. I've done a lot of shooting with just white dot sights. Not my favorite, but it'll get the job done no problem. Of course, you saw the slide stop lever here. You can see this little cutout in the back. That is, of course, because this firearm can have either a thumb safety or it can come without the thumb safety. Of course, this particular one doesn't have it. The price is the same no matter which configuration you get. You do have an accessory rail here on the front, so if you are the kind of individual that prefers a lighting or laser system on your gun, you can do that, no problem. Trigger guard is kind of small. I'm not a big fan of that. And I know this is a small gripe, but whenever I look at a firearm, I really like to have a little more space between the front of that trigger guard and my finger. I don't have the biggest hands in the world, but I've got medium to large hands, and so my finger, I like being able to get in there a little bit easier. It's not a deal breaker, but it's just something to keep in mind. It's got a pretty good trigger, and as a matter of fact, I've shot a lot of different M&P pistols from different calibers that they offer, and we'll talk about this more in the range section, but it actually has a pretty good trigger on it. Of course, you got your magazine release here on the side, which it's pretty good size, but with the ergonomics of the way your hand's placed here, when you're in proper shooting position, I don't really see where your hand would get in the way of that. You do, of course, get two of these magazines, which I like quite a bit, and they are metal magazines. One trend that I've seen is a lot of these mags are plastic, and I'm not saying that that's always a bad thing, but I like to see metal mags on a gun like this from time to time. The texturing of the grip, it's not super aggressive, but it is a good positive feel for the firearm. So just looking it over, it looks a lot like, as I said, like a basic M&P. Now, another thing that's going to be different about this, unlike your regular M&Ps that are striker fired, this does have an internal hammer. So that's something to keep in mind, and you'll kind of feel that in the trigger, because a striker fired gun and a hammer fired gun feel just a little bit different. But it's not something that I think is a bad thing. As I said, once again, it's got actually a pretty good trigger. We'll cover that more in the range section, but that's going to be your overview of the features of the M&P 5.7. A range discussion about the M&P 5.7 or any 5.7 based handgun would not be complete without discussing the availability and costs associated with the ammunition. If you've been in any gun store, if you have shot 5.7 cartridge before, you know what I'm talking about. Finding it and finding it reasonably priced is going to be hard. So if you plan on doing a lot of shooting, you're going to experience that pain for sure. Now that's something to keep in mind, because if you do really like this gun and this is something you're considering getting for your lineup, well, you need to consider what it's going to cost to shoot it. And I'm not going to unpack everybody's prices. I don't really do that, but it's just something that you can see for yourself, and you can look at the availability and kind of verify all that stuff for yourself. Having said that, I actually got lucky because I didn't have to shoot my ammo, because I've got a couple of colleagues that are constantly in competition with me about who's got the new gun faster, and they seem to have unlimited ammo resources. So we shot their version of the same gun with their ammo, so I can tell you pretty much anything you want to know about the performance on the gun. Now, the first thing I will say is that the FN 5.7, every platform I've had my hands on, whether it was the original 5.7 or the Ruger 57, they're very accurate. You know, this is a cartridge that, you know, the gun itself, it's a big enough firearm with a long enough barrel that you can really get some good precision shooting done, and it doesn't take a lot of work, I think, to get yourself trained up to do that. It's just a good shooting firearm. The trigger, I was talking about this earlier, but the trigger on this firearm has got a really good feel to it, and it's different than the other M&Ps. Like I say, it's got an internal hammer, And normally when you have an internal hammer, or any hammer, it's got a certain feel, like it's a little harder to push through. You know, you can feel the weight of the action. But with this firearm, the trigger feels just as good as any M&P that I've shot. So I feel like that Smith & Wesson did a really good job making a trigger for this gun to make it really, really easy to shoot. And the trigger's, you know, pretty light too. My scale, this trigger came in like around 4.5 pounds. Some trigger pulls were a little bit less, but it's really not bad. I think I even had a couple that were measured like 3.9. Now I don't know, you know, what results you would get. It probably just depends on how broken your firearm is and things like that. I'm sure there's a little bit of tolerance they put into this, but I got a pretty consistent pull, you know, somewhere in the low to mid 4 pound range. So it felt really, really good. When you're considering a firearm like this for carry, obviously there's things that we look at as far as size. We'll cover this a little bit more in the carry section. But I was kind of surprised that they didn't offer this firearm in a non-threaded barrel version, because just looking at it, it seems to me like it would have been really easy, you know, to make this gun just a little bit shorter. And if they did, you know, we were talking about the original comparison with the Glock 17. I think if they'd have made this gun just a hair shorter, made that option for people, I think there's people that are going to carry this anyway. But I think it'd have been a lot easier if we'd have got that option to have a non-threaded barrel version. But anyway, having said that, surprisingly enough, the system that they use, very reliable. It wasn't picky with ammunition. And even with not stopping to clean the firearm, just having a good day of shooting, it performed really well. So if you like the Pfive-seven cartridge and you're somewhat excited about a kind of a slim, sleek platform with a 22 round magazine, you might want to take a good look at this, because I think that good things are going to be coming, you know, long term. We're going to see about the reliability of the firearm, but this may be the better option for carry if you're considering the Pfive-seven as a carry gun. So what's it like to carry the M&P 5.7 as a carry gun? Well, I had to get a little bit creative here, because I don't actually have a holster that is a exact fit for this firearm. It's just kind of a different take. However, I do have tons of leather holsters. I got tons of Galco leather and other just kind of basic holsters that fit everything from Glocks to M&Ps and what have you. I've actually got a holster for one of my M&P 2.0s that has a longer barrel, but it's open at the end, and this fit that perfectly. So just for the sake of having something I could carry it on my body, that's what I used. I'm going to explore some of the better options here to look at this further down the road. But it's interesting because this gun is actually sleeker to me. It's a little bit thinner than the other versions of the Pfive-seven, but it's actually just a hair on the heavy side compared to the original Pfive-seven, just by, you know, a couple of 2 or 3 ounces. But you can't really tell that in a good holster, because, like I say, it's very, very close in size. And when you think about it, once again, it's a lot like carrying a Glock 17. Now, for me, I carry typically in about the 3 o'clock position, so this extra little bit of length, you know, coming into my holster, it doesn't really affect me, because all that is still taken up inside the distance where it goes down the side of my body, so I don't really feel this. However, I do think that if this gun was a little bit shorter, I think it would give you some options to maybe position the gun a little bit different in the holster for maybe better comfort. And if you carry your gun in a different position, like if you appendix carry or that kind of thing, this might make a difference. So as far as the weight, didn't feel any different than carrying a Glock. But, you know, when it's in the holster, it does have a very wide grip. So up over the top, it's, once again, like carrying a larger larger gun, like a Glock 17, but no different than carrying something like a 17. So if you've been considering a 5.7, if you were a fan of the 5.7, it wasn't any more difficult for me to carry this than it is to carry a large Glock. So it can be done. I'd like to see what it feels like in a holster. It's actually designed specifically for it, but just using what I had on hand, it wasn't bad. Well, if I had to discuss the overall impressions of the M&P 5.7, the best way I can describe it would be this. So if you're looking for something for carry, you've heard me say before, something like this is not going to be my first choice. And it's not because it's not a good gun. And it's not because it doesn't have some things that people would like. I mean, who doesn't want 22 rounds of a very capable cartridge in a gun that you can carry on you? Well, once again, you can do that. But to me, I try to go for the smallest platform that I can carry comfortably, just because I never know how I'm going to be dressed, and I want to ensure I actually do carry that firearm with consistency, and being comfortable will make sure I do that. Now, having said that, there are a lot of reasons why, if you like 5.7, that this is something you should look at. Number one, the capacity at 22 plus 1, that's awesome. And if you look at the pricing structure, well, the original FN, those are going for around $1,400. They're very expensive for an FN 5.7. The Ruger 57, which I think, the gun was okay to shoot, but it was so bulky. It was so much more bulky and just kind of weird in my hand. And that gun is MSRP'd around $899. Well, Smith & Wesson has this one listed MSRP at $699, so it is the least expensive option of all of the ones that I've seen available so far. On top of that, it has a feel that's very, very similar to a lot of the other M&P pistols. It's got a good trigger, and it seems to be very reliable so far right out of the box. So if you've considered that cartridge for carry, or even if you've considered this just as something to add to your arsenal of either training, plinking, with the cost of ammo, I don't know if I would use this for a plinking gun, but to each their own. If you've considered the 5.7 as something you want in your arsenal, I believe that Smith & Wesson has given you a way to do that that's not only cheaper, but it seems to be better. So I can't say anything bad about the M&P 5.7. It looks like to me they've done a good job. All right, that's going to do it for today. As always, we appreciate you joining us. We'll be back very soon with another video for you. So until that time, everyone be safe and have a great day. Thank you.